You nailed it. You
crushed it. Nailed it. Known you for a while and still can't pronounce your last name. So, all right, guys, my friend Darius here just wrote a book that's actually on the bookshelf behind him, The Core Value Equation, which I'm about halfway through the audiobook. The live book drops here in about 2 weeks?
1 week from today.
September 1 week. Okay, so go on Amazon right now. Do me a favor if you're watching this. Spend the $15, $20, $25, whatever it is. Buy Darius, pre-order Darius's book, The Core Value Equation. You're going to like it a lot. I'm going to keep an eye over here on the Facebook comments just to see if people have questions. But yeah, Darius also comes to us from the mortgage world. He was the CEO of the Money Source, badass company out of Northern California. They grew, for those of you in the mortgage business or real estate business, you'll know why this is significant. Grew from $1 billion in funding to over $10 billion in funding when he stepped down and left as the CEO to kind of take on this new venture of being a coach, a collaborator, a book writer. And your guys' servicing portfolio, which is insane, grew from $1 billion to $30 billion. And you went from like 30 employees to 1,000 employees, which literally makes my skin crawl when I think about that. So other than being a family man and an author, what did I miss in the 30-second Reader's Digest bio there, Darius?
No, you kind of nailed it. I mean, I spent, I consider, I used to, well, I always tell people now, I said, look, I'm an expert at 3 things. There's a 4th that I'll throw in for fun, but I'm an expert at mortgage. I'm an expert at, and I'm an inch deep and a mile wide. I've literally done everything from, I started out when I was 16 years old, telemarketing at a mortgage brokerage off title leads that, and by the way, back then they were on fucking index cards with stickies on them. And there'd be handwriting from the 10 other people that got told to fuck off. So that was my first job in mortgage when I was 16. And then I became an LO, and then I became a broker, and then I became a lender, then I became a wholesale lender, then a correspondent lender, then servicer. And when you do all those things, I mean, dude, I used to process my own loans, but when you do all those things, I joke that I'm an inch deep and a mile wide. I know and I can have a conversation with everyone from the processor to the guy that opens the mail to the person who's foreclosing on the house and have an actually intelligent conversation with them. So that's the thing with mortgage. The second thing I'm an expert on, I believe, is I can grow a company from 1 to 1,000 people or 0 to 1,000 people with no growing pains. And last but not least, core values. Those are the things. My tool for scale is core values. That is the secret sauce to how the businesses I've been in have grown. And we talked about the Money Source. Prior to that, I was heavily involved with the scale of Pacific Union Financial, which a lot of people know of. I grew that business with a bunch of the executives there. I had a joint venture there, grew that company like crazy. And prior to that, I had my own company called Twin Capital Mortgage that I'd started when I was 25, and that was a number 40 in the Inc. 500. So for me, I'm a high growth CEO. Now I'm an author, family dad. I think we nailed it all. The only thing I would say that that's not on there is I love pizza. And in some former life, I must have been like a pizza maker because, dude, I have like a weird fetish around pizza.
So wait, we got to go into this. Okay, so you start in the mortgage business at 16, which, we'll just shuffle that under the rug that it was probably illegal, but maybe there was no licensing then. I don't know. You learn every step of the business, like to scale the mortgage company or any business. Is that stuff that self-taught? Are you some Harvard 17-year-old graduate genius? Did you have great mentors? Like, how does somebody go from like, okay, I'm cold calling to now I'm learning the skill set to scale a giant company over 5 years? Because that journey sounds real quick, but there was clearly some learning in there somewhere.
Yeah, no, there's about 100 pages in the book of pain that I went through and so what ended up happening was, I had this job when I was a senior in high school. My brother was actually the one that got, I have a twin brother. Our first company was Twin Capital Mortgage because there was the two of us twin brothers that owned it. And so my brother actually wasn't much of a student, and he ended up, but the one thing he was really, really good at was sales. So when we had this after school job, for those of you guys who have ever worked in a mortgage call center, you'll appreciate this. But, I think we had to get like one interested person per night on the phone to keep our job. And if you got like 2 or 3, you'd make a little bit of bonuses. This is back when minimum wage was $4 an hour. And I think we were making $6 an hour. And so we were pumped. And if you got, 2 or 3 interested people a night, you'd make $7 an hour, which was like almost double minimum wage. So that was our job. And it was me and all my buddies from high school that would do it. Now my brother was like the savant. He would get 20 interested people a night. So it would be like his name on the top, and then he'd get 20, and the other 20 people would get 1 each. So my brother was 50% of the leads for the loan officers for the night. And he ended up like kind of going to college on the side, but staying in the mortgage industry. And I went to college. I went to UC Davis. I went there to wrestle, and then I went to UC Santa Barbara. All the while, my brother's in the mortgage business. So when I got out, I had a degree in business and economics from UC Santa Barbara, and I'm like, I can go get a job like working for Arthur Andersen as an accountant. But my brother's making like $100,000 a year as a loan officer, and I was like, I'll go do that. That seems more like it's more money, right? And so I went and got my real estate license and just started on the mortgage business. Now, funny enough, I got fired from my first mortgage job. They didn't have a junior program. It was a small company in Irvine, California, and they just blew me out after 4 months. I hadn't made any money. Moved to San Francisco, ended up screwing around. I was 23 for a year, but this is right after 9/11, so the mortgage business starts booming again, hard.
Yeah,
and all my brother and his friends are now making 30 grand a month, and they're like 23, and I was like, all right, I'm up here poor. I like working 7 jobs, one of which was like ordering appraisals for these guys. I was a stock trader. I was doing all this. I was just hustling, and I got back in the business, and so I ended up working for a broker. I became an LO. I built his brokerage up, and then I started my own in 2003, and it was me and an assistant. And I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was clueless. I had me, an assistant who was my processor, who didn't know. I trained her, who was my friend, and another a telemarketer. Well, this is July 2003. By September of 2003, I think I closed 10 loans in a month. And those of you guys that are old school will remember July 2003 rates went up like 2% in 1 month. It was crazy. This will happen again, by the way. So I apologize for when it happens for you guys right now, but it's going to happen.
Oh, it's coming. I keep trying to tell my coaching clients, like, stay in touch with your purchase business. This refinance gravy train is going to run out one day.
You're going to love this. So I was an LO, and I went to Europe before I started my company, Twin Capital. And so this is way before you weren't not doing cell phone in Europe back then, because it was like $25 a minute. And so I'm on a payphone in Ireland closing my borrowers. and so I get back, I start the business. And I had a bet with my brother. I said, hey, the month I make, now he was making like 30 grand a month and I'm making like 10. And he's like, I said, hey, come be my business partner. He's like, why would I do that? I make 3 times the money you make. And I said, listen, and I hated his fiance at the time. I said, hey, the month I make more money than you do, you got to break up with your fiance. You got to move to San Francisco. You got to quit your job. You got to become my business partner. So I closed 10 loans that month. These are all subprime loans. So I think I brought in like 80 or 100 grand in fees. And this is back in subprime days where you charge a lot per loan. And so, dude, my brother a week later drives up in his Escalade Cadillac, a Cadillac Escalade, has a bulldog, ditched his fiance, and became my business partner. And so we ended up growing this business, dude.
By the way, I hope he married a wonderful woman, because if you ruined his first engagement, you're just an asshole brother. Forget about the business story.
Dude, it was the best thing I ever did for him. He did marry a wonderful woman who he then no longer is married to. And now he's just like a single crazy dude. And he's been that way for quite some time. But my bro and I built this company, and we were young. We're 25 when we started. This is 03, subprime boom. We were a subprime company, and we grow it from us to 150 employees in 3 years. I will tell you, every single one of those people, from 1 to 2 to 3 to 10 to 15 to 20 to 30 to 50 to 60 to 150, was a fucking shit show brain damage. It was so hard and it sucked, and we did a bad job, but we were fast growing. We grew 2,500% revenue growth in 3 years. I had no idea what I was doing. And so it was a trial by fire. And the company, we were number 40 in the Inc. 500 in 2007, and we weren't even 30 years old. We like literally were just these like hardworking like sales guys who were building and we became a lender. We were a broker, and then we became a lender. We were selling our loans to Countrywide, and we were selling them to, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and all these guys. And then August of 07 came, dude, and we got crushed. Now we went from 150 to 10 employees in 90 days. And we almost went out of business. And it probably would have been God would have done us a favor had he put us out of business that day, because the next 3 years were entrepreneurial purgatory. We just got crushed. But during that time, I got lucky, and I got I was 26, 27. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was super curious and inquisitive. And I found this program at MIT called Birthing of Giants. And they brought in 60 entrepreneurs from all over the world and taught them the best practices for scale, for growing your business, for recruiting, for selling your company. And I mean, we were bringing in people like the guy that started Boston Market, the people that started the Roomba. I mean, like, it was like all these crazy entrepreneurs and investment bankers and guys that wrote books like Top Grading and Scaling Up and you name it, man. It was Simon Sinek. All these amazing thought leaders were coming in, and I was like just drinking from a fire hose. And I got introduced to this concept of core values, and it just stuck with me. And in June of 08, after my company was crushed at this point, I had realized that the core values could be way more than just words on paper, and that most companies, that's what they are. And I started this journey where I went through this activity that made me realize that I just didn't have core values in my business, and I needed to restart and do something different. And so I rewrote my values. I came back to the company and I made them more meaningful. They were easier to remember. And I started using them as a tool for scale. And I experimented with them. Like, I call myself a mad scientist. I kept experimenting with them for growth. How do I attract better talent with them? How do I run a better business with them? And so I did that for 5 years. And then in 2013, I started building the money source. I went there, I did a joint venture with my partner who was the founder, and something happened. We grew from 30 to 300 employees in 18 months. And I think we were like one of the largest wholesale correspondent lenders at that point, not correspondent, but wholesale FHA wholesale lenders in the United States. I think we were funding like, almost 1,000 FHA endorsements a month through wholesale, that's a lot in wholesale. And something happened. Like, before, when I told you I had 150 employees and it was brain damage the whole way up, and I did that in 3 years. This time I was at 300 employees. I did half the time in 18 months, and we were crushing it. And dude, it was fun. I had no brain damage. I had no pain. I had no growing pains. In fact, I didn't even realize it had happened until after the fact. And I said something was different this time. And I realized I had taken the tool of core values, and then I brought them to life in my company in a way that was like unprecedented. Like, my staff, I noticed I would walk by them and they'd all talking the language of the values all the time. And all that experimentation had turned into something that was so impactful and valuable that I literally grew like crazy without having any growing pains. And the one thing, our NPS was in the 80s. Our ENPS was in the 80s. We had high engagement. Everyone loved our.
What's ENPS? I'm not familiar with that term.
NPS, NPS, Net Promoter Score.
No.
That's like, every company does it. It's where you call your customer up and you say, hey, how would you score your service on a scale of 1 to 10?
Okay. Gotcha,
right?
Gotcha.
A 10 and a 9 is worth 1 point. A 7 or 8 is worth 0, and a 6 or below is worth -1. So the scale is positive 100% to negative 100%. To put it into perspective, the number one NPS in the United States back in 2013, when this happened to me, was with USAA Bank. They were 72%, and we were 83%. We were above Google, Apple, you name it. Like, the money source had the highest NPS in the United States. Nobody knew who we were, but we were measuring ourselves against them, right? And ENPS is where you ask that same question internally of your employees. How would they rate working for you? And we're like you're supposed to be at 20 points lower than your NPS, because your employees are usually a little bit more critical because they have to deal with you.
They know how the sausage is made.
Yeah, and we weren't. Ours was still high. And so I was like, whoa, this is crazy. What did I do here? And I realized, I was like, I've successfully built a language for my organization, and I've operationalized it to create scale in the business. And I use this word in the book. I had created invisible scale. The right people were showing up. They were doing the right thing.
I like
that. It was invisible scale. And so I believe that core values have the opportunity to become the language for the organization to create invisible scale. And my belief is they are the most valuable asset we have for scale when they're operationalized properly. So my book is really a playbook of how do you do that. And it gives the why, the science around it, and a lot. And I started just doing a lot of research once I got into it. I got nerdy about it, and I was like, What is it? Well, how do you get people to remember your core values? Well, there's a thing called Miller's Law, which is around the science of memory. And I apply that in the design of the values. How do you take an organization and design it for scale utilizing core values? Well, there's science around how you do that. And so I really get deep on that. And the cool thing, Scott, is you can take that, you can apply it to your family. You can take my book and read it and do the same. I do it in my family. We have family core values. I do the same thing I did at TMS. And I have friends that are doing that now. So look, companies don't have values. People have core values. That's just a fact. And so how do you want people to show up, the right people to show up to do the right things? The values have to align.
So, it's funny because I've worked at 5 or 6 mortgage companies. The one that I currently work at, Movement Mortgage, is very good about this, right? They nail the culture piece. They nail the core values. I've worked at other great mortgage companies, like no complaints about how the company is run per se. But, I can talk about this one because they're no longer in existence. Prospect Mortgage, which was a good regional lender. When you walked into the corporate office, there was this giant, the Prospect Mortgage, I don't even know, pillars or Constitution or something like that. And it was just the most corporate dribble, right? Like other than the 30 guys that were there that actually signed it, like the Constitution, when they started the company, it was like, to envision a fast-paced, cutting-edge, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, again, not a bad company, not horrible leadership there, although the company doesn't exist anymore, so that might say something. But it's just like the dribble that was on the wall. There was no chance a processor was ever going to walk in, read that, and be like, "Ooh, I'm going to be a better employee today." That's going to happen because I'm excited about being a culture of diversity and inclusion and 7 different adjectives just so that they could get across their talking points on a press release. And yet you're saying that that's one of the most important assets that a company has. So why do so many companies get it wrong with this 9 paragraphs of just total dribble?
Well, the thing I say, and what you're talking about, I call that words on paper, words on a wall. And I have a funny story about when that happened to me at my company, but let's rewind for a second. So I would challenge for me to go back to those guys that wrote that and say, hey guys, without looking, tell me what your core values are. And I bet you $100 that none of them would know it. And so I would
bet you $100,000 that not a single person that was there could recite them.
Right. And so the story I didn't tell was that when I was at MIT in year 3 of that program I was in, I had this moment that's in the book where I said, we did a peer-to-peer workshop and these guys that ran the #1 best place to work in Canada, these guys, John Sim and Ken DeHart, they ran this company called Nurse Next Door. And what they said was, all right, you guys, stand up if your company has core values. By the way, I do this with anyone whenever I want to get their attention on why core values are important and why they don't have them. 9.3 out of 10 companies don't really have core values. And I'll tell you why in a second. Please stand up if your company has core values. 10 of us stand up, or 60 of us stand up, because we all had been taught we need to have core values. Same as the guys from Prospect. They would have stood up too. All right, stay standing. If you know the core values, you can say them off the top of your head. Now, dude, I wrote my own core values. Guess who sat down that day? I did. And those dudes would have sat down too. But here's the funny part. I was in good company. Half the room sat down.
This is half the room at MIT, 3 years into a program where you're working on core values. Half of the CEOs in the room sit down because they can't recite their own core values.
Yeah. And we wrote them. Story gets better.
This is amazing.
He goes, please stay standing if your employees know your core values and say them on the top of their head. Half of the remaining half sits down. So I'm just like eating popcorn. I'm like, oh, wow, this is I'm not such a loser. Everyone here is a loser, right? Okay, then he goes, please stay standing if your customers know your core values. Everyone's sitting down except the 2 guys in the front. Now, look, customers knowing the core values is not, I don't think that makes or breaks you. But do you even put them out there for them to see, right? That's what I say. I go, look, do you even have them available in a public way that your customers know what you're all about? They're your values, for Christ's sake, right? And the answer is most of them don't. And in this room of 60 of the top, I mean, some of these people, man, one of the guys became governor of the state of Kentucky after he sold his company for 9 figures. This guy, these are studs, badasses, the most badass entrepreneurs I knew, right? And I mean, really, really impressive people. Some of them have billion-dollar companies now. And they're all sitting down. And I'm like, this is weird. And so I realized, dude, they got to stand for what you really believe in, and they got to be memorable. And you got to teach your team. And I didn't realize they could become the language of the organization. But what I figured out was if I said, hey man, Scott, I want you to learn to speak, I don't know, Farsi, right? And I said, here's a paragraph I'm put on the wall, and it's in Persian, and then I say, hey, but when you're done, before you go and read all that stuff, let's go close some loans. 6 years later, I guarantee you're not going to know what any of those words on that wall says. So it doesn't matter if they're in Farsi, Chinese, English. It doesn't matter. I didn't do anything to teach you the language. If I want you to learn,
I grew up in Glendale. I might know a little Farsi. You might be a little shocked here.
You're going to know bad words. I already know it. We can go there if you want. But the purpose of the statement is that, dude, what everyone does, and you said, well, why do most people not know them, is that it's a box you check. Hey, you start a business. What are your mission? What are your vision? What are your values? Check, check, check. Put it on in the folder. Go back to work. I got work I got to do. Why would I sit there and fuck around with those things? I actually have to go make money. I have loans I have to go close. I have processors who are overworked. I have the receptionist who needs something from me. Oh, wait, I got to stop and work on this value thing. I did. I built them. We're done. So the typical process is people, they discover their values. And I'm not discounting that what they did was meaningful, right? They cared about saying those guys at Prospect probably cared about what they wrote on the wall that day. It was corporate dribble because they had some HR person or marketing person in their ear that told them it needed to sound that way. They didn't know any difference. They're like, I don't know. I close loans for a living. What the hell do I know about building values?
Yeah, the board of directors clearly said, you guys are a big company now. We got to have our corporate mission and we're going to have our talking points for our core values. And they're like, all right, cool. Let's knock it out over the conference table one day.
Yeah. Check, check, check. Facilitator took them to Big Bear. They're done. They come back to work, right? So then it goes back to what everyone does. They do the discovery process. They check the box. Maybe they roll it out. Maybe they don't. Implementation's pretty weak. And then it's business as usual. So if I said, hey, dude, I want you to create a product that you're going to give to your clients, and it's going to be the most important product that you have to make money on in your business, and you use that same process, tell me what would happen to that product.
I mean, it would get all the attention of the entire company. If that was the most important product.
No. I'm going the other way. That they did that exact process. They had a weekend retreat.
It'd be dog shit. It would be gone in 24 hours.
Right. It'd be nothing. And let's just say that they did it and they put no money behind it and they didn't put any effort. Like nothing would happen with it, right?
Yeah, it just becomes another top shelf idea that gets put away with the notes. And then you pull out the business plan from 2 years ago and I'm like, oh, did I hit my numbers? Interesting.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Right. So why are we surprised when that's what happens with our values, when that's the effort we put into it? Now, I don't blame them for putting that effort into it because they don't know what the value is. So they're like, well, why would I do that? Dude, most mortgage bankers they're left brain people. They come from a production standpoint. It's a financial manufacturing business. I don't care though. I'm picking on mortgage because it's easy and you got a lot of mortgage people that are listening. Yeah, your companies, it's real simple. Close your eyes and repeat your company core values in your head. When you're done and you can't, you know what your company did. Shit, right? So that's just the reality, right? And so I look at it and I go, hey, look, well, what if I go the other way? What would I do if I wanted it to be valuable, where I wanted it to control behavior, where I wanted people to hold each other accountable to it? And what I end up doing is building an entire framework for it. And it's different. The discovery part's similar. You got to figure out what you stand for. But my difference is be unapologetic about it. If you're an asshole company, have asshole values. If you're all about being tough and rumble, if you're like a Navy SEAL, cut him on the throat type of company, then be that. Don't try to please everybody. And what these guys do, and this all comes from the top, man. Our entire all our politicians do this fake shit, right? So everyone thinks they need to tell you what you want to hear, and then they go do what they're really going to do. And we do it in our companies too. And then we wonder why people are totally unmotivated and disenfranchised. And my position is no. Nobody wants the leader to be like that. They want you to be who you are. And they want you to be transparent about it so they can understand it and that they can either not be a part of it because they don't want to be a part of your vibe, or they can be fully attracted to it because they know what you are. And the company needs to be like that too. So in the discovery process, I say, be unapologetic, be what you are. Then there's the biggest part of the book is the design process. How do you design it for scale? Because if I want it to be sticky, or I want it to be viral in my organization, I want it to be viral with my customers, I want it to be sticky in the ecosystem, I want everyone to know what we are, then I got to design it for stickiness, right? If I put out a bad product, it won't be viral, it won't be sticky. So my whole book is how do you design for stickiness? And the key is this, Scott, the key is simplicity. We got to make it simple. We got to make it meaningful. We got to make it simple. And then we got to roll it out. And I call that the core value marriage, dude, the core value wedding ceremony. Dude, if you're going to make it a big deal, we got to get married. My team's getting married to these things. And then it's not like I have a great wedding and then I ignore my spouse for the rest of their lives, which is both, by the way, what most companies do with their values. If they even have a wedding, but let's just say they have a wedding, then they go put it in the drawer and they forget about it. No, man, it's a marriage after that. You got to work on it. You got to invest some effort in it and time. And then last but not least, the chapter 8 in the book is why do all this? Just because you want to say you have core values? Screw that. My whole thing is like, do it for a return on investment. And you got to measure for that. So I have a whole system of measurement. I want to measure for ROI. I wanted to take that data and say, hey, we're making money because of this. We're beating the competition because of this. So it's discover, design, roll out, implement, and measure for a return on investment. Those are the 5 things. When you start to do that, then you start to have the results that we had at TMS, where we grew exponentially and that we had high engagement and we had a raging group of raging fans that were all about like working at that company. Dude, if you go on Glassdoor, we're one of the highest in the United States, 4.5. You know, I was number 9th highest rated CEO in America on Glassdoor. It's because we built a superior company.
By the way, I wanted to see if you were full of shit. So of course, that's where I went. The Money Store, Glassdoor, 574 reviews as of today, 4.6 rating. You're not bullshitting us. Like you guys are actually doing it right. So
yeah. I always say that's where the rubber meets the road. Listen, there's always haters out there,
of course.
But so you got to like take that in consideration. But I always tell people, I go, hey, listen, don't take my word for it. I got 500 plus. I think 540 of those are mine. I got 500. We got 567 reviews that says what we are. You don't take my word for it. Take all the team's word for it. Right? They're going to speak volumes. So yeah, the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah, it's funny because I think as you've been talking, I've been looking up the core values of a couple companies that I love. There's this clothing company out of the Bay Area where you guys used to work called I Am Project X. I love their clothes. They just have this weird kind of intersection of like kind of fitness, but not like the total CrossFit D-bag. And it's all got like a lot of Hawaiian prints and stuff. It's like a flashier Hawaiian vibe, Lululemon. Anyway, you look them up and sure enough, their core values are our products are made for people that enjoy fitness, food, and fun and want great customer service, period, the end. And sure enough, when I get anything of theirs in the mail, there's a postcard in there that's like, hey, this is why we really appreciate you buying from us. This is the CEO's cell phone number if you have any problems with our product whatsoever. And sure enough, like on their About You page, they're like, hey, is that really Tim's phone number? And they're like, yeah, he wants to hear from you. If the product is shit, like, he cares about his people that are buying his stuff and he cares about customer service. And so I will spend $60 for a pair of print shorts from I Am Project X. Like they just nailed it with their core values and who they're trying to attract. And I guess for a lot of people that are in this group, maybe they're either a loan officer that maybe works for a company that doesn't feel as connected to their core values, or you're a solopreneur, or you're a real estate agent. Like, what do you do if you're just like a one-man show, or you got your little team of 2 or 3 people and you want to have really great core values and do good things? Like, can you do it at a small level, or does it have to come from the company down?
No, it starts from the top. So look, like if your company's not doing, like I'll use an example. When I was at Pacific Union, they didn't have them, and I ran the West Coast. I ran the entire East Coast of the company, and they just didn't have core values. So I said, "Look, I'm just going to build my own." So I built them for my group. It was half of the country, and I built their entire wholesale division based on my set of core values that I had run. Because I said, if they're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. If you look at like real estate mortgage, a lot of times you're running your own company within a company anyway, right? Especially if you're like a branch. A lot of those branches used to have their own businesses. They were their own brokerages. And then they came in under the umbrella of, let's say, a Movement Mortgage or one of these larger branch companies. I would build my own values and see, but they would have to align with the company values if they have them. If they don't have them, look, banking is a very left brain industry. It's very all about the numbers, right? So a lot of time, and it's usually built by bankers. So a lot of those bankers, and most of those bankers are production people. Most of them were people that were LOs at some point, right? And they got into very, very rarely as an operations folk, but even the operations folks, usually they're risk people or they're going to be credit people. These are all left brain people, right? And when I start saying core values, their eyes glaze over. They're like, oh yeah, we have core values. And I go, yeah, what are they? Crickets, right? So they don't know. And so if you're a part of that organization, you can only control what you can control, which is I'd be like, hey, if it's Team Darius at Keller Williams, Team Darius's core values are X. And then when I'm teaching them to my team, I say they align to Keller Williams core values in this way, right? Unless we are already fully aligned with Keller Williams core values. And I just say, these are our core values, and I teach them. Why recreate the wheel? Now, if you feel like your team is different, then you may want to take it in a different direction. And it's cool. My book will show you how to do that. It's easy. It doesn't matter if you're a big or small company. Core values rule your life. My belief is this. Do you want me to tell you what the core value equation is? Where that name came from?
Yes.
You want me to run you through a quick exercise?
Yeah. So just this is the Scott Groves team. I do like our parent company's core values, but maybe our team is a little bit more cutthroat. I don't know. So go for it.
We're not going to figure out your values. I'm going to tell you why it matters, why your values will matter, Scott. Scott, this is why I think your values matter. What do you think causes every single result in your life?
Our habits, I guess, is what I would think.
Well, what do you have to do? What do you have to do to create a result? Like actually do?
I have to execute. I'm not following you, but I got to execute.
That's cool. You got to take action, right?
Yeah, of course.
So your actions equal your results, right?
100%.
Okay, cool. So we're in agreement that your actions equal your results. What has to happen in order for you to take action?
Well, for me, I got to be motivated to do it.
Okay, so
and I've got to believe in the outcome, because if I don't think I'm going to get the outcome I want, I just won't. I can't get the train going.
Okay, so you're motivated, you believe in it, and then what happened? What do you do before you take an action?
Plan.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a word at you. You make a decision, right?
Yeah, of course.
So would you agree with me that you got to believe in it, you're motivated, and then you make a decision, and then that decision is to take an action.
Yeah,
and then you take that action, and then a result happens, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just say, what do you think causes you to make a decision?
Some belief, some hierarchy of needs in my head from my childhood. Probably didn't get hugged enough by mom or something like that.
What if I was to argue with you and say that you have a conversation with yourself?
Oh, 100%.
Right. And by the way, do you know how many decisions we make on a daily basis as a human on average?
Oh, I've read this number. It's like unfathomable. It's like 22,000 or something crazy like that.
Yeah. It's 2,200 per hour or 35,000 during the day, right?
Yeah.
So how many conversations are we having? At least 35,000 conversations we're having. Oh, should I eat that pizza? No, I don't want to do it. I don't want to gain weight. Oh yeah, I do. I love pizza. Fuck it.
Yeah.
So we're having all these conversations, which leads to decisions, which then leads to actions, which then leads to results. Right. So therefore, conversations equals our results. The conversations I have lead to the decisions I make, leads to the actions I take, leads to the results of my life. Right.
Fair enough.
We're on the same page. Okay.
Same page.
Well, what are conversations made of?
Now you're going to lose me, because now we're getting into some meta stuff. Like conversations. We're kind of back to our beliefs, right? It's like my two belief structure fighting with each other.
I'll make it simpler than that. A conversation is a string of words. Right. It's a bunch of words that come together and form a conversation. Right. So the words we choose lead to the decision, to the conversations we have. Right. Are you in agreement with this?
Totally.
Okay. So if I choose shitty words, oh, I suck, I'm the worst, I have negative conversation because there's these bad words that are coming together to form this really negative conversation. I then make a negative decision, which then leads to a negative action, which then leads to a negative result. Right. I feel like crap.
100%.
Okay. So what if I was to say to you that I believe that your core values can become the language of your organization? Wouldn't that mean that they are the words we're choosing then? If I said, Scott, you are in control of the language of your life, and the language of your life can be your core values, would it then become the words you're choosing? If it was the words if your core values were your words?
Totally.
Okay. So therefore, core values equals words equals conversations equals decisions equals actions equals results. And there's this thing in math called the law of transitive equality, which is A equals B, B equals C, C equals D, D equals E, E equals F, A equals F. Therefore, core values equals results. I'm a firm believer that every single result in our lives is a result of the core values we live.
That's bold.
Every single one, man.
So this is, you mentioned you can have core values in your family. You can have core values in your own life. Like, let's just say that I'm becoming the person that doesn't eat the pizza. That's a great example, right? Like, I want to be a healthier guy. I'm not quite committed to like 6-pack abs or looking at like one of these guys who's on HGH at 45, but I want to be skinnier and healthier, and I want to be able to do jujitsu without getting out of breath. So if I was to write the Scott Groves core values, I would say whatever, healthy and vibrant or something like that, or under 200 pounds, whatever, something a little bit more tactical. Scott's core value is he wants to never be over 195 pounds, which it's been a few years.
I would take it a different direction. Scott's core value is to live a balanced, healthy life.
Scott's core value is to live a balanced, healthy life. How do we force that conversation into the decision-making instead of, like you said, just reach for the pizza and just be like, whatever? And this is a very simplistic view, but this shows up in a company culture when you say, we're gonna, one of our foundations, one of our core, values is honesty. But then we've all seen mortgage companies that like all of a sudden they start to get away from that core value, right? And it's like, how do you make sure those core values actually affect the conversations, which affects the decisions, which affects the actions?
Well, so what I say is core values aren't perfect, right? The fact that you are claiming that your core value is health, then my next question would be like, great, what's your plan in your life that attaches to those core values? What are you doing? What's in your calendar on a weekly basis that supports those values? So in a company, if I look at your strategic plan, if I look at your execution model, and I look at your values, I say, are the things you're working on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis aligning to your values? Yes or no? It's a yes or no question. If the answer is no, then you're not living your core values. If the answer is yes, then you're promoting your core values. And then you build accountability around it. All I'm doing is attaching actions to values, right? So then I go to your personal life. I'd say, great, Scott, you believe in health and wellness. What did you do this week to promote that in your life? And you'd say, jack shit. And I'd say, like, well, then you're out of alignment with your core value. So you have two choices then. Number one is you stay out of alignment, or number two is you get into alignment. So this is all around your actions are either in or out of alignment with your core value. Now, at some point, you're going to have to be honest with yourself to say that is really not one of your values. You just are lying. It's aspirational and you're lying to yourself.
Right.
And your real values around like gluttony and pleasure, which is okay. Just don't fucking lie to yourself.
Right. This is like the company you mentioned. Like, if you're a cutthroat environment business where, I think about a buddy of mine, he went into mergers and acquisitions right out of college, and he knew day one, it's like, hey, for the next 5 years, you're a slave working 90 hours a week, sleeping under the desk. You're not allowed to wear French cuff collars until you get to this level. I mean, just some crazy, like straight out of Wall Street, like the 80s movie, not Wall Street. I'm talking about Wall Street, Gordon Gekko. But he knew what he was signing up for. And the deal was, you get to the end of that 5 years, you'll never make less than $1 million the rest of your life. Like, but it was trial by fire, and they were honest about it. Now, had he got into there saying like, we're all about work-life balance and we're going to have yoga classes at 10 a.m., he would have put a bullet through his head. So I guess at some point, like, I just have to make that decision as we're, joking about my personal core values. Like, am I the gluttonous pig, or am I the person that wants to be able to do jujitsu at 50? Like, at some point, I've got to square that in my mind on my core values, right?
I don't like pain. I just want to like eat pizza and chill and drink beer, and I'm okay if I die 10 years earlier. It's all good. I'm going to enjoy those 10 less years way more than the other dude that hasn't had a carb in 6 months. Fuck him. Right. So It's just about honesty, and it's just about authenticity. And so many companies, and I say, look, why is it valuable at a corporate level? I was giving you one example, right? But what if I got 1,000 people to resonate their conversations the same way? What if their actions were aligned? What if I don't have to police their behavior because they're just doing it because it's who they are? That's how you get invisible scale. And what ends up happening is if everyone's talking the same language, then their actions support that language, their decisions support that language, the results support that language. And then there's it when you feel it, when you're not in line with someone else's beliefs and language. You feel out of place, right? And what's going to happen is the people that feel out of place will either get asked to leave or they're going to self-select out. And that is, by the way, a positive for both. For the organization, I don't have I don't have to babysit Joe's feelings because Joe wants work-life balance and we have a warrior culture. Joe can go work at the nonprofit and have harmony in his life. Like, it's all good. He'll be happier there. He gets to have his break every hour, and he gets to have a 1 hour lunch break, and they work 35 hours a week because 1 hour's lunch is paid lunch. And dude, work-life balance is all good. But if I'm at a company where warrior culture is the expectation, it's 80 hours a week, then I want people that believe in that, because dude, there's plenty of people that like doing that stuff. And all that happens when you mix the two is you get a diluted culture. I get friction. I got the Joes that want to work 35 hours, and I got the Dariuses that want to ball out at 80. Do you think Darius is gonna be cool with Joe? I'll be cool with Joe, like, getting the fuck out of my company. That's what I'll be cool with, right? But it's nothing against him, because I don't feel like it's an equitable relationship then. I'm sitting there slaving away. I don't get to see my kids. I don't get to do all the stuff I want to do, but Joe's over there doing it, or the other way around. Joe's like, dude, why is Darius always looking at me with dirty looks, right? Because Darius doesn't respect Joe, because we don't share the same values. It's not fair to Joe, and it's not fair to Darius. So my belief is we want people that share our beliefs. We want our tribe. We want to talk the same language. We want to go hunt for buffalo together. And when we come back, we want to share it the right way. And when we have that organizational efficiency, that's when we start kicking people's asses. And that's when your family life gets better. And so I believe every result, good or bad or indifferent, starts and ends with our core values. And my book's about how do you design that for scale.
And just since you're obviously a student of this, can you give us a couple of the favorite core values that you've seen? They're like, oh yeah, that was a good one, or that company nailed it. Whether or not they're that warrior culture, or they're more of the work-life balance. I know you and I are both, we're not making a judgment one way or the other. We've both worked at each of those type of companies, or had those type of teams. What are some core values that you've seen, and you don't have to repeat them word for word because they're not yours, that you're just like, oh yeah, nailed it. That feels good.
You know, most of them are ones where I've helped people build their core values because I've helped friends do it. So I mean, I love all of ours. My first company was do work, live zen, break the box, wow everyone. I love do work, which it came from. Remember, there was a show on MTV called Rob and Big.
Yeah, Rob and Big, do work.
And do work. We took it from that because I love, my brother loved that show. So do work was like, I love do work because we were hard workers, you know. But live zen was the balance to that. We were all around karma and balance, and I didn't want to kill myself. You know, I didn't want to work Saturdays every weekend because I realized that I didn't make more money when I worked Saturdays. I just didn't get to see my girlfriend as much, who was now my wife, right? I didn't get to see my kid, who's now my 10-year-old, right? My baby then. So like, it didn't matter. And what mattered to me was having family time. So live zen was the inverse. I'll work hard, but I want to live zen. I want to have balance in my life. So those were cool ones. I have a guy who I helped him do his, and his number 4 core value is called Mi Casa. And it was, and it's like, come as you are. He takes a line out of Nirvana, and it's all around like my home is your home, right? And the guy's an orthodontist, right? And he's a super cool dude. And I loved his come as you, or Mi Casa. I thought that was a cool core value. So it's expressing it in the tone of the organization. I'll be honest with you, a lot of companies they kind of try to do too much with their core values. They're really long. They're hard to remember. But I love core values that fit the tone of the organization. That's what I love. Good ones, when you say them, it makes you think of the company, right? Yep. And that's what I like. When they're boring, or like I did this talk at SMU at Southern Methodist University to the entire football team. And it was like a communication leadership class I taught, and there was a bunch of football players in there. And so I did this exercise where I wrote down, I got their schedule for that fall, and I wrote down the core values of every university they were playing. It was like Florida Central University, University of Central Florida, and it was a bunch of these SEC companies or teams. And I was like, hey, what team do you think this is? And they all sounded the same. It was like, you know, loyalty and, you know, courage and integrity. And then the next one was like integrity and, humble, humility. And there were these boring core values. And the last one was like the same old stuff. But the funny was, I said, you guys know who the last one is? And they're like, and they're trying to guess their schedule at this point. And I'm like, it's you guys. It's your school. It's your team. You guys don't even know your own core values, right? So the reason for that was their core values all sounded the same. And I'm like, look, man, if you want it to be the language of your organization, which is this really cool thing when you do it, man, you know it when you've had it. Anyone that's been on a winning team, you guys had a language. So what's funny is I had this guy on my show, Jimmy, blanking on his name. Anyway, he played football for the New England Patriots. He won a
Jimmy Garoppolo.
No, he was in the 2001. It's I'll remember the name in a second. Sorry, I'm blanking on my buddy's name. I'm having a brain lapse. But anyway, I said, hey, let me ask you a question. What was it that made you guys such a good team? Why did you guys, like, you played on 6 NFL teams. He was in the NFL for 6 seasons, which anyone can say. I don't care if you were the best player or the worst player. That's an accomplishment in of itself, right?
Yeah, sure.
So Jimmy Ferris is his name. And so he was a receiver for the Patriots the year they won the Super Bowl in 2001. I said, what was it about it? He said, Belichick set the tone of the organization. And I said, well, how's that different from other organizations? He said, the tone of those organizations did not create a winning environment. So what's interesting is, what is tone akin to? Tone is akin to how we speak.
Yeah, to your values.
Right. Again, tone, how we talk is our tone. So it all comes back. There's a lot of science around the words we say matter, right? This is why I have issues with our current administration over this. You and I talked about this, when we first chatted. And it's not about his values. It's about the words he chooses. Because I think words matter, and I don't like people that are frivolous with words, because I believe they matter. Because if you believe that every single word you say creates the results around you, you're going to be way more careful about the words you use.
Right.
Because I don't want to be frivolous with my words. They matter. They affect those around me. You know what's interesting? There's a Maya Angelou quote, which is like, people don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel. Words are powerful, man. They make you feel a certain way. And as a company or as a family, if you're in a church, you're in an organization, you're in a community organization, what are their values? What words are they choosing? Think of the winning teams you've been on, Scott. Did you guys have a language that you guys used?
Oh, for sure. It's funny, as you were mentioning the Patriots thing, I looked up Bill Walsh, who, I was just old enough to remember how great the 49ers were in the 80s. I was just getting into football around that area. My family was a huge Pittsburgh fan. And if you look at his stats, in 1979, the year I was born, they were 2-14. 2 years later, they won the Super Bowl. And then they were lost in the divisional championship, won the Super Bowl, 3 trips to the divisional championship, won the Super Bowl. And I remember a friend of mine who was an older gentleman. He was a professor at the college where Bill Walsh used to teach, and they had become friends. And he goes, yeah, the only thing Bill Walsh does different as a coach is from day one of training camp, he sets the tone that our goal is to win the Super Bowl. Not have the best team ever, not do your best job, not run that route correctly, not get to the Super Bowl. Our job every year, if we're going to be a football team in the NFL, is to win the Super Bowl, period. And, I'm sure when he showed up in 1979 and said that to a team that was, went 1-15 the year before, he probably got a bunch of middle fingers and eye rolls. But with effectively the same team, he won the Super Bowl 24 months later. I mean, it's really crazy. Everything you just said reminded me of Bill Walsh, who, anybody who hasn't read an autobiography on Bill Walsh, the former coach of the 49ers, absolute must read. Amazing guy.
Yeah, the words we choose matter. And so the core values is the opportunity to create the language for the organization. And so using Bill Walsh as an example, this is same team went from 1-15, 2-14 to the Super Bowl champions within 4 years. Come on, man.
Within 2 years.
Within 2 years, excuse me. So within 2 years, you're telling me that doesn't matter? Is he that brilliant? No, he's a better leader. And our jobs as leaders is to create the culture for our environments. That's what I believe. That is the power. And we don't just do it. This is the problem I have with the word culture is it got hijacked by HR people and marketing people. They've hijacked that word. Sorry, my HR and marketing friends, you guys hijacked that shit. So, and they hijacked it and they turn it into this fluffy crap you throw on the wall that no one cares about.
Right.
And I'm going the other way. I'm like CEO brain. I'm like, how can I take this to win the Super Bowl? Right? I want to win the Super Bowl.
Yep.
I want to set the tone. I want to manage. And you know what? Once I set the tone, then it's around accountability and execution. And then it's around how do I keep people motivated? And I got to take bullets. I got to go out there and show them these aren't just words on paper. I live this every day. I'm your leader and I'm living it too. So if you want to have that effect, you can't just throw fake words on paper, hand them out, and think people are going to go back to work and give a shit. I can promise you they won't.
Right.
You'll be 2-14.
Yeah, it's nuts. And you know what's funny is we were talking about right before we get on the call, how this affects all the other decisions in your business, right? Your marketing, your this, your whatnot. I mean, we're coming to you in September of 2020. still a lot of civil unrest, a lot of protests from Black Lives Matters. That, there's a lot of confusion now over the movement versus what may or may not be becoming a political campaign. There's all kinds of stuff we could talk about and dissect there. But at the end of the day, when I get we support Black Lives Matters from Nike, for example, that feels to me authentic with their core values and who they are and the people they represent. When I get that same message from Lululemon or IWC, International Watch Company that sells a starter watch for $7,000, and I think they're a British company, I'm like, come on, guys. That's not in alignment with like your other marketing messages and who you are as a company. That just feels like you're jumping on some type of, to your point, marketing and HR bandwagon, or yet we've got to check that box. Like, this so much affects how people feel about your brand, the core values, right? Am I missing something here? Or am I just trying to look for fire where there is none? Because it just feels weird to me when brands start preaching to me out of context of where I believe their core values to be.
No, I mean, I like, look, I don't know how sincere they're being. Let's assume sincerity for a second, right? So I like to assume best intent, right? That's one of my.
That's so nice of you. I like to assume worst intent.
If I do that, then they become the words in my head, which becomes the actions, and I just went through that equation. So I do like to assume best intent so let's just assume best intent for a second. Let's assume that they really do think that it's important that, a minority group who's been mistreated gets treated better, right? There's nothing, no one's going to say that that's a bad thing.
No, it's a great thing that we should all be aspiring to, right?
Totally, right? Where I have issues with that is when you start to say that your values are that, when I go and say, okay, fine, let me look at your actions that support that's your values. And to your point, let's use one of those watch manufacturers. What are they doing to promote? What are they doing to support that ideology of equality? What are they doing to support the reduction of systemic racism? When I look at their board of directors or their C-level or the makeup of their employment, does it match that of society? Is it 10% African-American or 11% African-American? Or is it, negative 10% African-American? And when I see something like that, and I've had friends that reach out to me that, people that run, not big companies like Nike, but, they got a couple thousand employees and they have, not in the mortgage business, but, and I have a lot of people in my network that are just in all sorts of industries. And they're like, hey, what do you think about this? Our CEO wants to come out with some messaging around Black Lives Matter. And I said, well, I got two questions for you. Is your C-level representative of the population in the state and or country you're in? What do you mean by that? Well, 70% of the population is white, 50% are women. What is it, like 15-20% are Latino, 10% are African-American? It's something like that, right? Is that what you have? Do you have 50% women? Do you have 11%, Black, African-Americans on your board or on your C-level? And when the answer is no to all that, or if it's no to that, then you know the answer already. Don't bullshit people, because people see right through it. And look, man, I'm not going to say people aren't stupid, because a lot of people, you can feed a narrative to them and people will eat it up as long as it matches their confirmation bias. People will eat up bullshit all day long, right? But people know authenticity when they see it. At least with the confirmation bias, at least people believe what they're saying. They just start feeding a narrative, right? But on this other side, when I see like the white board with the white C-level with the all dudes saying that stuff, it's like, come on, dude, you're not really into that.
Which is interesting, because I think those group of people can still care deeply about what's going on with society. It just feels weird to me that there's messaging coming out that doesn't seem to be in alignment with any previous development. Like if there's a hurricane in Haiti right now, and the company I work for, Movement Mortgage, decides to lead a missionary trip to Haiti. It's like, well, okay, we have no Haitians on our board, right? We have no Haitians in our C-level, but we have a history of like loving and valuing people and doing outreach and community support and first aid responder and stuff. Like that kind of seems like in alignment. But if all of a sudden we were to do some sports sponsorship and put, our name on the Staples Center and it's now the Movement Mortgage Center, it's like, that doesn't really feel in alignment with what we're doing. Like that's not how we've decided to build our brand. So it's interesting, because you and I talked about this before the call. Now, I wish we would have just been recording and going live. It's like this all interplays, right? Your core value affects who you hire, how you market, how you grow, right? Like a core value of a company might be to stay small, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like you don't have to do exponential growth, right?
Yeah, it's every decision you make should be shaped on the values you're promoting, right? And so I like to stay out of the tactical, and I like to say, well, what are you trying to create? Am I trying to create a family environment? Okay. The minute I'm scaling to a point that it dilutes the family environment, then I have to question either A, was I honest with myself about wanting to build a family environment, or am I doing the right things to scale that in the business, right? Because it's not to say you can't have both. It's just to say having a family environment is our value, and we are going to do the actions to support that. The actions are, look, your actions are so loud I can't hear you talking, right? Like I love that quote, right? Because I believe action, and one of my core values at TMS as inspiring leadership, we said we believe actions are the only truth. You can say whatever the hell you want. Talk is cheap, man. Like, oh yeah, we support this, like this thing that's happening with Black Lives Matter, right? Like
actions are the only truth. That's so good.
Actions are the only truth. I don't care what you say. I don't care what any politician says. Your actions are the only truth. I don't care. And nor should you. And when people start saying, well, they didn't, that's not what they said. I'm like, I don't care what they said. What they do. What they did is what's the thing about integrity? Integrity is what you do when no one's looking, right? It's all around what you do. So this stuff that when they're politicizing Black Lives Matter, I look, it's really important that we face some of the racial issues we have in this country. And I don't think we need to make it a political competition, right? I don't like that that's what's happening. I think it's bullshit. And so I think it's bullshit because I think that it's being politicized for the wrong reasons on both sides of the aisle. And the reality is we need to fix the problem, which is we have some socioeconomic issues in this country that have not been addressed for a long time, and nobody wants to take accountability for it. This is all around accountability, right? And now it's being politicized because people have found a way to benefit from it in other ways, or they really do care about it. I don't know. Their actions are the only truth. That's all I look at. So we'll see, But yeah, when the companies are doing it and they're being disingenuous, or they're doing it because they think they should do it, that's the wrong reason to do it. Here's a better thing. Don't say anything. I have a way better idea than supporting it publicly through advertising. Don't say a word. Go and spend a bunch of money building programs that support everything that movement stands for quietly. Don't take any fucking credit for it. And then tell me you support it 3 years from now. That's what I want you to do. Then I know you mean it.
Yep. By the way, along these lines, I hate Jamie Dimon with the burning passion of like 1,000 Suns because of all the underhanded stuff that happened with Washington Mutual, where I worked for 8 years, and all the drug deals and like literally the government just picking winners and losers. And that goes against like every libertarian fiber of my being. However, one thing that I think Chase is doing really interesting, I don't know if you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. The last time Kevin Hart was on here, on the Joe Rogan podcast, he was talking about a partnership with Chase where they're trying to get people that look like people that live in the inner city to go out and talk to them about finances. And, Kevin Hart shows up and is like, yes, I was successful, but here's step A, B, C, D, E, F, G to get your money straight and like get groups of people out of these socioeconomic conditions. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's exactly what companies need to be. If that's their core values, launch an initiative, have a program. I would have never heard about it if it wasn't for the fact that Kevin Hart was on the Joe Rogan podcast. And then 5 years later, come out and be like, hey, look at what we've done for this community to increase savings rates and home ownership and stuff like that. Like that to me felt good. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to maybe reassess my feelings about Chase Bank and Jamie Dimon, but I digress.
Well, we need to reshape capitalism, right? Because I take ownership of the title conscious capitalist. I'm a conscious capitalist. I believe that we need to have a consciousness not around shareholders, but around stakeholders. And some people don't like that. And I say, look, if you're making profit and just because GAAP says expenses and profits recognize a certain way, doesn't mean you're not creating other expenses that GAAP doesn't recognize. Mm-hmm. And so there's socioeconomic expenses that some companies create, or that's ecological expenses that are getting created. And yeah, their stock's doing great, but they're putting a ton of toxic shit in the ocean, right? And we're like, okay, like someone's got to pay for that. Oh, don't worry, let your great grandkids pay for it. Or mine will be rich. Yours will be paying for it when they're drinking Martian water, right? But so I look at stuff like that and I go, hey man, we all need to have a real awakening around how we make money. And we're all look, I think you can do great by doing good for everybody. And it's not about one person winning and someone else losing. And I think the Chase needs to put their money where their mouth is. And it sounds like they're doing it because they make a lot of money and they're better off if society's better off. We're not better off by having a bunch of have-nots in this society. We aren't.
Yeah.
Does it mean that we need to have a safety net and people just get free money and don't have to do anything? Absolutely not. But at the same time, we live in a connected world and a connected society. And as much as people hate to admit that, and they're like, oh, they go take care of themselves. I'm like, yeah, you're going to take care of them one way or the other. I'm either paying their tab in jail or I'm paying their tab in society, you know, to get them healthy and to get them educated and to get them productive. Which way? I don't know. What do you want to do? I want to pay 80 grand for them to be a felon, or do I want to pay 80 grand to get them educated? I'd rather pay the 80 grand to get them educated. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, man. I feel like we need to have you back on. You and I will just do a whole political thing because I've got so many thoughts on what's happened in the last few months, and I'm just trying to find smart people to even organize those thoughts because it's like on a daily basis, I have, you know, a devil and an angel here on my shoulder fighting over some weird issue. I'm making like 300,000 decisions a day, just trying to figure out how I'm thinking. So, hey, tell people where they need to find you, what you got coming up. Obviously, the core value equation, whether you're trying to build a better family, a better team, a giant company, like that's going to be valuable for people to check out. What do they need to know? Where can they pre-order? What can they?
Yeah, dude. Here's the book. So the book comes out September 15th. Thank you, by the way, for all this. You can go to thecorevalueequation.com. And that's where you can order the book at Amazon or any retailer. It's on Audible. It's on all those places. We had a great audiobook. How do you like the audiobook, by the way?
I love it. It's real good. And I know you went through like 200 speakers to like figure out who the hell was going to articulate your book, but it came out very good.
Yeah. Graham Hamilton, great actor. Anyway, yeah. So you go to therealdarius.com. That's where you can find all my stuff. Go in there, sign up for the newsletter. You can order the book. And you can go to Amazon, all those places. The other place that you can find me is here on Facebook. I have a live stream. Scott, I'd love to have you on it. We could chop up and do some combo about some of the political stuff on there if you want.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. That'll be
fun. Block out like 3 hours if we're really going to go deep on politics.
Dude, let's do it. Let's maybe we'll have a 3-part series. It'll be like we could do each candidate and then we can do every political movement that's good and bad.
Perfect.
We'll each take a side and we'll debate it.
Okay, cool.
It'll be awesome. And I could sing like Neil Diamond to you. And so, hey, by the way, have you heard of this thing called Project Veritas?
Yes, of course.
So, dude, the chief legal officer of Project Veritas is my good friend. And,
nice.
and so he was on this morning on my show. And I sang Coming to America by Neil Diamond to him.
Amazing. That guy, if you're the head legal counsel for Project Veritas, by the way, for people that don't know what we're talking about, this is a right-leaning organization that goes in and tries to do undercover videos to prove their point of view. That legal counsel, he must be busy as shit.
He's the first guest I had who had to leave the show 10 minutes early because they had a legal fire that popped up. And he had to push and it was funny. I said, you guys are funded by the Koch brothers and you guys must be right leaning. And he's like, we're not, we're all about the truth. And I'm like, but, and he kept going there. He's like, nope. If you have someone on the right that you want to take out, let us know. And I'm like, dude, 99% of your stories are like undercover journalism against the left. And he's like, nope, we're all about the truth. And he stood his ground on it, which was interesting. Cause I was like, dude, I saw a bunch of shit about adrenochrome and like kids getting kidnapped and in Pizzagate, and you guys' name was right behind it. So I don't know. That's seems political to me. But anyway, yeah, dude, I would love to have you on the show. Guys, you can check me out at The Real Darius M on YouTube or on Facebook. And that's where I have my show. And we do a lot of fun stuff. It's called The Greatness Machine. So yeah, either the book or the show, and therealdarius.com is where you can find me and connect with me. And I'm happy to talk to people about the book or any of the cool things I'm working on.
I love it, man. We're going to get on your calendar. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, man. That was fun.
All right. Later, bro. Thanks for being on.